morning. Today I'll be speaking about, or I'll be refuting the claim that legalizing drugs will positively benefit the United States. The advocate makes three secondary claims. He claims that drug legalization will improve our justice system. Second, he argues that it'll eliminate the black market. And third, he claims that it'll boost our economy. For the first claim, he claims that by legalizing drugs, it'll improve our justice system by allowing officers to focus on more violent crimes that aren't related with drugs. So he says that he also mentions that our prisons half of our prison populations are made up of prisoners who are convicted of non-violent drug offenses such as drug trafficking, drug possession. And he states that by doing so, by passing or by drug legalization, it'll allow these type of offenders to not take up room in prisons, and it'll draw less focus away from these types of crimes won't be committed anymore. So that it'll allow, like I said, it'll allow law enforcement to focus on more serious crimes. However, if we were to legalize drugs, it'll eventually it'll make drugs easier to access. It'll make them cheaper, and then that'll just drive up drug-related crimes. In the study in Idaho in 2008, it was found that 49% to 87% of all arrests tested positive for at least one substance in the system at the time of arrest. In addition, between 15% to 40% tested positive for multiple substances. So, like I said, if we were to legalize crimes, if we were to legalize drugs, it'll just it'll be easier to access, and they'll be cheaper, so the usage will go up. In a second claim, he states that the elimination of the black market, that drug legalization will eliminate the black market. He says that vanishing the black market will reduce gangs and drug cartels and gangs bring violence into the black market. So just basically getting rid of the black market, there will be no more violence because of the drug prohibition. He also goes to compare drug prohibition with alcohol prohibition, stating that alcohol prohibition drove up organized crime and violence. However, he doesn't have any evidence to back this up. So basically, because if we legalize drugs, it's not going to eliminate all violence. Any drug that makes people act in a violent manner or in a non-safe way, it's just because we legalize it doesn't mean that these drugs are going to become safe. So legalizing drugs isn't going to reduce crime or isn't going to stop violence that occurs because of these types of drugs. Susan Neilberg states that legalizing drugs cannot change human nature, cannot improve social conditions that compel people to engage in crime, nor can it stop people from using drugs as an excuse to be violent. So basically, legal or not legal, drugs often lead to crime and violence. In his third claim, he states that it can improve our economy, and he also states that we can improve our economy by taxing drugs and putting regulations on them. However, he also goes to mention how which kind of relates to his first claim, if we were to allow drug usage legally, it'll allow convicted prisoners that had drug offenses or drug-related offenses such as possession or drug trafficking. It'll set them free, and it'll allow that we can even create drug programs to aid addiction. However, this is going to cost us money either way. So So that's kind of like, it kind of contradicts his claim where we can boost our economy by taxing drugs. However, we can offer programs to prisoners who are released from jail for drug possession and trafficking. However, that's going to cost us money, so I felt that was kind of irrelevant. So in conclusion, legalizing drugs will all positively benefit the United States. If anything, it would just create a whole set of new problems.
All right, so the structural stuff is fine. There's a lot of reading at the beginning. When you get to the first point, you kind of summarize everything that the advocate says, and that takes up a lot of time. You kind of do that on all of the points, and I understand that you want us to be reminded of what the argument was, but I think you need to develop your responses to those arguments a little bit more. There is a counterclaim on the first point that basically says that drugs are going to be more accessible, and it's the access to drugs that it really fuels crime. So there's an argument that you're presenting here that reverses information on this first point, and it also applies to a point later on, and that is that drugs cause the crime. It's not that maybe somebody gets busted for using drugs and they go to jail and they say, oh, they're a nonviolent offender, but the truth of the matter is the vast majority of people who are committing offenses are on drugs at the time. We probably lucked out in getting them on the drug charge, preventing dozens of other crimes that they were likely to be committing, burglaries, assaults, that kind of stuff. I think there's a good argument to be made that says that drug control is an attempt not just to control consumption of drugs, but to limit the amount of crime that goes on, and then I think you've got a good argument there. You use the same kind of information. You've got a quote on the black market point right at the end where you were citing Yelbert. To me, that piece of evidence would fit better on the first point and make your point there. The second point on the black market, you ask a couple of reasonable questions, but I think there needs to be some demonstration that legalization would have a minimal effect on organized crime. Organized crime is probably just going to adapt to whatever the new rules are. The notion that Al Capone is going to disappear because alcohol has been legalized again, that might have applied in the era of Prohibition. The notion that these enterprises that have their fingers in all kinds of things nowadays would be significantly harmed by changing this, they would probably merely just change tactics, and I think that there might be a good counterclaim on that point. On the issue of economic benefits, I think the crime argument applies again here. If you can demonstrate, for instance, the legalization of drugs is going to increase people's consumption of drugs, drug consumption is not good for productivity. The idea that we're going to have a more productive culture, that we're going to be able to tax all this stuff, well, that assumes that everybody has money in order to be able to buy the drugs, and they earn that money through legal means. Your argument is they're not likely to earn the money to buy the drugs through legal means, and once they're on drugs, the likelihood that they're going to be productive is pretty low. I think that's kind of the way that you want to state that. So I feel, as I'm listening to this, as if you are going through this, thinking about a couple things to say. Once in a while you hit a little bit of a nugget of an argument, but sometimes it just feels a little bit like you're spinning your wheels, kind of repeating what their position was and trying to find something to say about it, and you haven't quite located that. All right, thank you.